Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Interlinked, the official podcast of Neo Tokyo, powered by Shrapnel.
Brace yourself for impact, crypto gamers. I am reporting from the sacrifice zone. STX 3.2 dates have just been announced, and it's going to be going down from July 25th to July 30th. Make sure to block off your calendars so you don't miss out on those mission rewards. These missions come in two different types, ones that earn you Shrap and ones that earn you weapon skins. These missions could be getting a certain amount of kills with a specific weapon, or extracting with a certain amount of weapon skin fragments or Sigma, and you'll want to complete these missions as the prize pool for 3.2 is 1 million Shrap. And if you just can't get enough Shrap, pick up an operator NFT, as holders are going to get 50% of that million Shrap pool. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Playa3ull Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on Playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked.
Today, we have probably one of the most highly anticipated podcast episodes of all time. We have the two legends from Karate Combat, and we are excited to do a deep dive and to jump in and to dive in. With me, as always, is the most legendary co-host, literally of all time, Mr. Nick. How are you doing today, sir?
Dude, wonderful. I'm assuming that you're going to get an offer for a influencer fight after displaying that absolute peak martial arts. But stoked to be here. Stoked to be talking to Karate Combat.
Definitely. A gentleman, or should I say, sir, an alien, very much welcome to the pod. We're really excited to have you guys here.
Pleasure to be here, guys.
It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So I really want to lay a foundation for the actual project itself. We want to talk about Web3, how you guys are probably doing more than almost any other project in the space of like actually bringing Web3 to the masses. But first, we'd love to just kind of get some intros on you guys a little bit, for doxed, undoxed, however you guys want to go about it, but just a little bit about your background just so we kind of know who we're talking to. And then let's do a deep dive into the project itself. So just kind of want to hand it over to you guys for some introductions real quick.
All right, cool. I can go first. Onlylarping here, one of the co-founders of Karate Combat. Historically, I was one of the largest investor in the league, and then I've been in crypto for about a decade. And a few years ago, we fell in love with this crypto idea that we just had to do. So I've been running with that and leading that for a few years. For the first 5 years of the league, we didn't do any crossover between Karate Combat and crypto at all, but we went all the way.
And my name's Awesome Zaidi. I'm the president of Karate Combat. I'm a lifelong martial artist, and I was a fighter myself. I won kickboxing worlds. I became a coach and had a very successful MMA team. We fought around the world, and as time passed, my fighters started getting more viral. We started kind of taking over the combat sports space, and I was offered this position with Karate Combat, and man, it's just been such an awesome ride right now. I feel like Karate Combat is just shooting up, skyrocketing. The whole world is recognizing how amazing these athletes are, how forward thinking the company is, and it's a pleasure to be a part of it.
Absolute legends. I would love to now maybe transition over to talking about the project itself and Karate Combat. And maybe you guys can just kind of tell the story a little bit. Maybe we start off talking about some of the Web3 elements, just so people have some context. I think that makes the story even more awesome. But yeah, just kind of want to hand the mic over to you guys to maybe introduce us to the concept and to the project and really tell us a story. Keep in mind, we have a full hour, so let's go long form. Unabridged. We don't need to make a long story short. Let's keep a long story long. We want the good stuff here.
Don't talk as fast as I humanly can.
Please.
Okay, cool. So as I mentioned, Karate Combat's been around for a bit. The league was started in early 2018 by one of my best buddies from school. And we built it together. And the goal was to build a sports league from the ground up to appeal to the next generation of fans. across every vector that mattered. So first of all, on distribution, pretty radical, especially at the time. Completely cross-platform with zero paywall. So the same time Karate Combat events are being distributed with great television partners internationally like Eurosport, Globos Combate, BN Sports, we're streaming the entire event live for free on the internet everywhere that's important. So our own site, karate.com, but also YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, UFC Fight Pass, you name it. We even go further and we invite some of the biggest streamers in the world to come to our events and stream live on their own channels. Like we're just about as permissive as we possibly can be with our own IP so that we can reach younger audiences where they are and grow as fast as possible. On the rule set itself, the format, it's called Karate Combat. But to casual fight fans, it's essentially the UFC without the grappling, without the submissions, the time on the ground. The North Star here is build the most entertaining, striking rule set humanly possible. It's super fast paced. We also make the rounds a little bit shorter, so they're 3 minutes. The scoring favors aggression. So if you're hanging back and counter punching, if you don't knock out your opponent, you're going to probably lose on a decision. We have an extra round when it goes to a split decision, and everybody fights in this crazy sunken patented pit. So super fast paced and entertaining rule set. I'm trying to fill this large gap in the market between full MMA and boxing, where we think like casual fans are like the most entertained. On the production side, the goal here is to make every single event look like a unique level in a video game. And so 2/3 of our events we hold in small stadiums, convention centers, film studios, and beyond the audience of 2 to 4,000, we project a 3D VFX environment rendered live in Unreal Engine using really precise camera tracking. So the server that's rendering the world knows exactly which part of the world the camera is pointed at. And that can be anything. It can be completely tailored to a sponsor's needs. And so we've had, events on Mars, on the moon, in the jungle, you name it. And then lastly, on the Web3 side of things, which is really where I spend most of my time, as I mentioned, I've been in the space for about a decade, building businesses, but we did no crossover between Karate Combat and crypto at all for the first 5 years. But almost 3 years ago now, we came up with this idea we fell in love with. And the thesis was Karate Combat has this very large awareness. We've got 6 million followers. We get hundreds of millions of views organically on the internet every month. But converting that large awareness to true super fandom, where the real money is in sports, is not trivial. It ordinarily takes a lot of time or a lot of money. To be honest, sometimes you really need it like dad passing it down to his son almost, right? And we came up with this idea that we thought can potentially shortcut that process. Because if you pull our demo, essentially young males, almost half of them will tell you that they don't enjoy watching sports unless they have a bet on it. It sort of makes sense. They grew up playing games, using social media. They expect this level of interactivity and access that you don't really get sitting on the couch for 4 hours. And so our dream was, imagine if we can get all of these people a little financial upside on every single fight. If we could pull that off, maybe we can get them researching these slightly lesser known fighters ahead of time, learning their names and their backgrounds, building that emotional connection that's critical for someone to really deeply care about a sporting event. And then during the event, they're hyper engaged because they have the chance to win a little bit of money. So that's like the background, and I'm happy to go into the mechanics of everything we built, but I'll take a pause there in case you have any questions. I've been talking for a little bit.
President Awesome, I saw you were about to say something.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, you can't say it more eloquently than that, like it's just he puts it so beautifully, and that really breaks down the whole structure of everything, definitely.
Yeah, so let's maybe dive into the Web3 portion first, and then I've got a tons of questions around the actual sort of like fight league, the decision making, the pit, incorporating grappling and influencer fight nights. So there's a lot to dive into, but maybe first dive into the mechanisms around the Web3 portion and the karate token.
Okay, cool. First, I'll explain like why we did it a little bit more deeply. So we wanted to build this sort of like game, this no loss sweepstakes on every fight. Um, we ended up branding it Up Only Gaming. And so the way Up Only Gaming works, before every single event, all of the karate token holders can vote on which fighters they think are going to win. When they vote on winning fighters, they earn a little bit more karate token from a fixed karate prize pool on each event. So super important. Um, if they vote on losing fighters, they're not losing anything. This is not gambling for some like specific regulatory analysis. And that's critical to us because as a sports league, we can't be running like an offshore shadow casino, on-chain, off-chain, anything, because we're having events in the UAE and mainland China and the US. Um, but hopefully, this mechanism that allows them to potentially win a few percent more karate tokens per event is enough of an incentive to get them doing that research on the fighters and really building that emotional connection. So that's why we built it. It was for Up Only Gaming, but once we got there, um, we're like, we need to make sure that this token is not just like a meme coin. This was 3 years ago, meme coins weren't like ridiculously hot. Now it'd probably be better with like zero utility. Um, but we went all the way with it. So we happen to own the league mostly ourselves, and we burned the bridges. We sold the entire league to an ownerless Cayman foundation. We structured the foundation such that it can actually be governed by the token holders. And so for the first time ever, you have a real sports league with zero equity in the structure. Nobody owns it, and it can actually be governed by the token holders. So we built it to build this financialization, but so that the token, wasn't worthless. It wasn't just like a meaningless token nobody would care about. We had to, give it governance.
And I'd love to dive into a little deeper around that governance, like
Sure,
exactly how it works, and then
sure.
perhaps the dynamic. We've run into this in Neo Tokyo. There's often pressure to like structure it as a DAO, but when you're building, I always say that the founders' fathers waited until everything was built, and then they were
Yes,
like, "Here's a democracy," because building via democracy is much harder than maintaining via democracy.
definitely. Um, So it's actually run very smoothly. So we've really prioritized UI UX very heavily because in our heads we're like, we need to scale this to, our millions of fans, right? This needs to be easy enough for ordinary sports fans to use. So while we do have a web app that you can use with any compatible wallet, like 99% of our community is using the native iOS and Android apps that we built. And it's a real crypto experience though. So like when you download it, you automatically get some free tokens dropped into your non-custodial embedded crypto wallet, sort of state-of-the-art consumer retail crypto experience. And not only does the game run in there, but we also run league governance in there. And probably had about 10 votes to date, getting like 2 to 5,000 participants on each. Um, and to date, most of the governance proposals, because they've been largely proposed by the team, have been centered around the actual rules of the combat sport and certain parameters around up on the gaming and liquidity incentives and stuff. So the community itself hasn't really kind of like dug into the point where they want to like start controlling how the league works per se, like on an operational perspective, which is probably a good thing, but the power is there. We have an open forum, we build in public, and anyone can propose anything they want. The token itself, the holdings are relatively concentrated up front. So I think it'd be difficult for the community to like screw things up per se, but everything's built there so that over time, the governance can be more and more distributed. And I think that's pretty valuable because the more bought in people are to feeling like they have real control, the more passionate they are. The NFL, it's run by 32 billionaires. 32 billionaires, 32 votes. It can't be that much harder than that, right? Like if they can pull that off, we can pull this off. And so yeah, that's how it works. Awesome came in. He had a million rules he wanted to change about the league. He's done an awesome job about that. So maybe you could talk about some of the proposals you put out to evolve the rule set to where it is, which is, I think, pretty close to being finished. But
Yeah, definitely. Prior to me, the last president had a really point fighting background, extensive point fighting karate background, and he was really great in that realm. So he sort of had a different idea of the rule set needed to make this hybrid sport. But as we get more mainstream, as we get higher level fighters, we needed to really focus on creating the most elite rules possible. And we need to simplify the rules so that way we can explain to any fan in 3 sentences, 3 sentences. Any fan in the world should understand what the rule is, the rule set is. And I think that's what we've done so far. Sorry, that's our matchmaker. I'm putting out a fire on the side. But anyway, so the rule set's gotten far simpler than what it was before. Now, essentially, you can explain it like, look, you got punches, kicks, elbows, and knees, and you got ground and pound. And it's very simple there. It's essentially very similar to the UFC, except no submissions, no holding. So it's very easy for a combat sports fans to understand what karate combat is. And I truly believe it's the most dynamic striking sport right now in the world. When you look at like boxing's very limited. It's only the punching. Even kickboxing gets very limited because when a fighter falls, they get 10 seconds to recover. It's not a realistic scenario. With karate combat, it's so cool because you have the world's best strikers, but you have this hybrid rule set where you have that ground and pound where fighters can run up and finish the fight if someone gets dropped. It just creates for such a unique type of fight. And I think that's what's going on. And just like Onlylarping just said, the rules have evolved to a point where I don't think there's much to change anymore, if at all. Nothing really stands out in my head. So I think we've gotten to a point where we have completed what the karate combat rule set looks like. And it truly is the most dynamic striking sport in the world, without a doubt.
we just had a big, pretty contentious rule change last week. I think it just wrapped up this weekend. You can see all the rule changes at karate and all the up on the gaming results at karate.com/dashboard. And Awesome didn't really tell us, but from the beginning, he's wanted to add elbows, which there's, arguably some downsides. It can create a lot of blood. It could create early stoppages. But he was pretty passionate about it. And he directly campaigned to the fans and the token holders pretty heavily. And he got it done. I mean, I think it was pretty close though. Like I want to say like 60-40 or maybe even less. Let's see here.
Yeah, I think it was like 56-40-45 or something.
Yeah, 55-45. So about as close as it can realistically get.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're going live for Singapore in 2 weeks, right?
Exactly. And the elbow rule, although it's very controversial, I think it's very important for us because right now, in the striking world, anybody that's watching combat sports, all the time, the biggest argument was like, oh yeah, but there's no elbows allowed. Muay Thai guys would come in there and just, beat everybody up because of the elbows, and it was just like this argument. It's sort of like a Batman, Superman argument. Like you can't really test it out unless if we pass the elbows. Now we can truly find out and truly make sure that, our rule set is the most complete. And a lot of people were concerned about, like Onlylarping said, about the blood, different things like that. But I don't think it's going to be as dramatic as people feel. I don't think you will see that many stoppages from it. I went deep into it. I looked at statistics. Doctor stoppages are only 2% of fights, which is very, very, very tiny. So 2 out of 100 fights may be sacrificed with the early stoppage, but the pros that are gained as far as the high level fights we're going to have, I think it outweighs all of that. So, and then the day, I think it was a big win. I was on Twitter just like I felt like I was doing it was like the presidential election. I was just like going out there, guys, please trust me, believe me, this is correct. And thank God we got it done.
Yeah, I love it. Plus, like, I certainly imagine that that's going to add to some pretty crazy highlight reels, spinning elbows and such. There's an
Definitely.
excitement to elbows. Not to mention, like, you don't want enough blood to get a stoppage, but usually the fans don't hate blood.
They don't.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be the case. I think there was. So I was really worried to even let only LARPing know and some of the other founders know about that I wanted to change the elbow rule because I was worried about the whole blood thing. I thought I wasn't sure how people were going to take it. But looking at it now, the way combat sports have evolved, I don't think people mind it as much. I think kind of people enjoy it a little bit. So we'll find out if it adds to the action.
Any sort of concerns around like YouTube or any of the social media platforms around blood? Did that come into the discussion? I haven't run it. Obviously, we don't run into that too much on the podcast.
And I've talked to our guys. Everything seemed fine, especially if you go on YouTube right now and you type in any sort of fights like Muay Thai fights or UFC fights where you see those elbows allowed. There's some pretty bloody fights that are on YouTube and doesn't seem to have too much.
Yeah, I mean, bare knuckle has their highlights everywhere, and
Totally forgot.
that's extraordinarily bloody
Yeah,
and successful, to be honest. It's like alongside us, one of the kind of formats that's really growing quickly in combat sports, I think.
without a doubt, for sure.
So how do you guys kind of think about the inherent, let's call it virality of kind of what you're building, where the fighters are basically these social media rock stars. Everybody thinks they're badass because they are badass. Definitely could, kick my ass. That's for sure. But like, you have these like rock star players, and then you have a lot of people that are engaged and they're watching. And then just thinking about like how you're really getting them engaged in the actual token, in the actual project. Like, what is that user flow? And I know you kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but like, what does the user flow look like? And how do people go from they don't really know that much about Web3 until, they kind of start engaging with you guys, they see your content online, and then they, you kind of bring them through this journey. Like, how does somebody
Yeah, I'll
truly get
talk about that part
onboarded?
first. So, it goes to like how we've segmented our marketing. So, on Twitter, our marketing's pretty Web3 forward because that's where crypto lives. And I'd say a large portion of our Twitter audience is crypto. And I think even people who are not crypto people who are obsessed with Twitter know a lot about crypto at this point because it's got to be some huge portion of it. So even uh, Twitter's pretty big in the MMA and sports world as well. Um, but even the people there who live on or like terminally on Twitter probably know a decent amount about crypto at this point. You don't see it from us that much on like Instagram and TikTok because these platforms like are very large and old for us. We've got like 1.6 million followers almost on each of like Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And the way we grew those audiences was not like crypto first. And so it doesn't perform as well. And when it doesn't perform quite as well, like the algorithm notices and you just don't get the distribution. So what we do instead is like really, really deeply integrate the crypto side of things into our broadcasts because there we have a captive audience and we can hammer it home again and again and do it in really creative ways that's more interesting, frankly, than you're going to see in a short video. So before every single fight, we're talking about the up only gaming odds. We talk about any rule changes that have been made by the fans. We talk about our leaderboards. Because nobody owns the league, all the perks that traditionally should go to owners of sports properties should go to the token holders. But instead of giving them out to the largest token holders, we give them out based on where you are on the up on the gaming leaderboards. So we talk about all that stuff a lot. We interview a lot of people who are involved in the Web3 side of things during the broadcast. And so that's where we really educate like our sports fans.
So your top of funnel is basically like your bigger legacy platforms where you're just gathering traffic and eyeballs who are interested in the sport. And then those who you convert from, okay, they've liked a tweet or they're interested on TikTok or they've seen a
Uh-huh.
YouTube video or something. Then on the live broadcast, you're kind of indoctrinating them into the true culture and getting them
Exactly.
involved, and then you're kind of building them in. That makes a lot of
Exactly.
sense.
And then the virality question is really better for Awesome to answer because he is an expert at getting athletes who are really like hard asses, right? Like they don't really drink, they don't really smoke, they don't really get in trouble. They're training all day in general and pushing them to market themselves, which he's incredibly good at. The one thing I would say before he takes over is we think about this constantly. Awesome itself is one of our kind of most viral brand assets out there, and I'm constantly pushing him to be as ridiculous as possible. One thing I'm always telling him, and I write about online, is if you're not afraid of getting fired, you are not pushing the envelope far enough. Um, and so hopefully he's telling the fighters the same thing. Um, but yeah, I'll let him
Well,
take it.
I'll tell you this. So it's always been the case, where I tell fighters if they really want to promote themselves well, if they want people to get behind them, they got to truly show who they are. They got to show themselves and go out there. And the thing is that what happens is a lot of times traditional fighters, they'll go to these press conferences and you got to imagine there's these giant press conferences. We had to rent this beautiful venue, decorated all this stuff, get all this pressed over there. It was so much hard work. And then a fighter will grab a microphone and say, I'm going to let my talking happen on, Friday night at the cage. And it's like, yo, we did all this work to get a microphone in front of you. You got to own that moment. And that's something I tell our roster all the time. I'm like, guys, we're going to get the eyes on you. And it's your chance to really own that moment, get your fans, and create that hype around yourself. So I really push those moments, and I have meetings with our individual stars that are really coming up and try to come up with like custom ideas for them. What are they going to walk out with? What's their post-fight speech going to sound like? Is there any particular technique that they're planning on pulling off of their fight? At the press conference, what do they want to do? What do they want to say? Is there a specific question that wants to be asked? All of these things so we can engineer, the most viral moments possible and really give them a platform to go ahead and get their name out there. So that's sort of the objective, but that's different per athlete, right? Everyone is going to be different. For instance, we have an athlete from the mountains of Pakistan. We're going to advertise him and promote him, and it's going to be very, very, very different than we market a fighter from, a pretty boy from Miami, for instance, right? So we allow athletes to be themselves, and that's why I love Karate Combat so much. When you go to most organizations, most of them are forcing them to wear, here's what you have to wear every single day of the week. You can't say this. You have to act like this, whatever it is. We're very open to anything. However they want to walk out, however they want to market themselves, whatever uniqueness they have, especially Onlylarping's like that, where he's very open about however they want to promote themselves. And I think that's what makes us really unique and gives us that unique feel.
Well, I
Yeah, I
love that
like that a
you.
lot.
Sorry, as you were, Ben.
I was just gonna say I like that a lot, and I actually think Nick and I should be embracing more of that as hosts of the pod. Maybe like challenging each other to be like, no, I'm gonna ask the best question, or whatever it is. But I definitely like that because it gets people fired up. It gets them excited about something, and it's like when they see that character development over time, that's a story that they want to be a part of, and it just seems like that would be very captivating and it like registers with people on an emotional level.
For sure, and I give speeches to fighters very often because remember, I was a full-time MMA coach for a long time. Now I'm only coaching a handful of guys, and I've really backed out from that a lot. But still, I'm there, and I'm sort of like a mentor to a lot of these guys, and a lot of them grew up in very not so great places or have really extreme stories, and it's really crazy if we dive deep into each one of them. They're really fascinating people. And the fact that they're even here, most of them martial arts saved their life. If it wasn't for the martial arts, they would be in a very, very bad place. So they really love the martial arts for that, right? It saved their life. And as their sort of coach or mentor, I have to kind of direct them on which path to go on. And the other day, it was yesterday that I made the speech, actually. What happened was there was one fighter that was sparring in my gym, and the other fighter has a huge fight coming up, actually in Singapore. So actually, Onlylarping, you don't even know this. One of our guys fighting in Singapore, his name's Lorenzo Trevino. He's the first fight of the night. He's decided to fly to Miami and finish his camp here in Miami. He just wants to come to my gym, stay here for 3 weeks and train with us. So you got to imagine it's his second day at my gym. Okay. He doesn't know anybody. And all of a sudden, a guy comes to the gym, another fighter, and they start talking crap during sparring, and they're swinging for the fences. So I stop and I tell them to calm down once. Then they keep going. I stop and I tell them to calm down twice. And all of a sudden, Lorenzo Trevino gets cut under his eye, which potentially could, stop him from fighting in Singapore, which is going to be the biggest moment of his career, right? And now he's mad. And now he puts on his fight gloves and he's like, put him in the cage. I want to fight him right now. So I took him to the side. I sat him down with me. And remember, this is the first experience I have from him from a heart to heart, right? Because I've only would see him compete first at Karate Combat, but I didn't get to sit down with him and look him eye to eye. And I sat down with him and I said, listen to me, man. There's going to be people around you that are jealous of where you're going to go. And they want to keep you where they're at. That guy over there is fighting on a regional level. He's going to fight on a regional level for the rest of his life. You're fighting in Singapore. He's here trying to prove something, get you angry, and now you're going to go ahead and fight him in the cage, and potentially you'll end up being a regional fighter like him. Instead, ignore this guy. Ignore this guy. You have this big fight ahead of you. Focus on that. Focus on promoting your fight and leave these people behind you, So that really meant a lot to him. I could see because he was so angry. And he went from a very upset state to all of a sudden very calm because he knows where he's going with Karate Combat. There's such a big opportunity. Karate Combat really changed the lives for a lot of these fighters. And the same thing goes, a lot of these fighters are intimidated to be outspoken because of the backlash that's going to come on the internet with like trolling, for instance, right? Like there's going to be a lot of haters out there. They're going to say, oh, this fighter's cheesy, or this fighter, he talks too much, or whatever it is. So I gave that speech to him as well. I said, look, man, you're out there in front of the cameras now. You're being interviewed constantly. Understand there's going to be a lot of people that are just against all of this that you're doing, but they want you at their level. They don't want to see you go up there and put yourself out there on the line, because they're jealous. They wish they could do it, And I think that helped him a lot because the background he's in, he's kind of a more soft-spoken person. And he's embarrassed to grab that microphone and really tell people who he is. And I think we really connected there. And he's someone to watch out for in our Singapore event. He's going to be the first fight of the night. But he's a special dude for sure.
And I love that lesson, not only for, for fighting and for Karate Combat and, fighters coming up, but just for even people working in Web3 companies or general companies. There's these little ego events that can completely derail everything that you're building. Oh, I feel like I'm doing 60% of the work and this partner's doing like 40%, or I don't feel like this, and if you just push all of that aside and you can put your ego to the side and be like, hey, I'm building something, I'm not going to get derailed. I think it makes such a big difference.
It really does. And curious, you guys started this podcast. Was there anyone ever on, while you started this podcast, I was like, hey, why are you guys even doing this? Right? Was there anybody criticizing you guys like that? Or was everyone supportive?
Less for the podcast have I run into that, because I think Neo Tokyo is stoked that we were making a podcast. So in our little bubble, but certainly in Web3, people all the time will be like, what are you doing? Like, go focus on something that could actually work. Like even on Bitcoin, they'll start it. I'm like, oh, if you think Bitcoin's a scam, I'm like, you don't even want to see the shit I'm buying on Uniswap. Like,
that's what I mean. All these guys are going to have their opinion, and you just got to, where you're headed. You just got to keep going down that path, man. That's all.
Yeah, I actually think the thing that we continuously go through is that we have so many different things that we could be focusing on. And so, kind of what you're saying of like, focus on like, hey, where are we going? What's the goal? What is the opportunity? Like, because if we don't get focused, we'll be at that regional level. But if we stay focused and just hit it and then, bring amazing guests like you guys on, and, and just crush it week after week, like that focus, that consistency, and just staying in the zone. That's, I think that's the real challenge. Cause yeah, like, people definitely FUD all the time. But we don't have to bring them on the show. So, we don't have to care that much what they're what they're saying.
Yeah.
But definitely like the focus piece, I think, is probably the biggest piece for sure.
Makes sense.
That's good that you said that. I think it's good that you said that for sure. I would love actually if we could maybe jump into a little bit of the future. We kind of talked a bit about the past. I think we did a really good job there, of just kind of covering things. We can jump back if we need to. Definitely happy to open that back up. But I kind of want to talk about Singapore. I kind of want to talk about what you guys are planning. Like, what are you guys excited for? What does that mean to you, really? What do you think that means for the sport, for the project, for the industry? Like, I think it's going to be a historic moment.
No, definitely. I mean, I'll let Onlylarping talk on the. I know we're partnering with the crypto conference and stuff, so I'll start with Onlylarping.
Yeah, I mean, so at the beginning of this year, we had like most of the crypto conferences reach out to us to talk about partnering, because almost all of them are trying to transition from being like a conference to more of a festival. And I gotta be honest, I think we're the best side event out there, hands down. And so they were all looking to us to throw a karate combat event at their conferences. And so far we've been at Token 2049 Dubai, Consensus in Austin, BTC 2024 in Nashville. And upcoming, we've got this huge event at Token 2049 Singapore, which is arguably at this point the largest crypto conference in the world, and one of the most beautiful venues in the world, Marina Bay Sands. We're actually inside of Marina Bay Sands. We've got huge fights going on. We're on the main night of the conference. The conference is Wednesday, Thursday. The event is Wednesday night in the venue. And for us, I think Karate Combat has done a very good job of educating kind of Western Web3 audiences about the sport of Karate Combat. I think we still have a lot of work to do to like educate everyone about what we've done on the token and the governance and the crypto side. But I think in Asia, we're sort of starting from scratch. I doubt that much of Web3 in Asia really knows about Karate Combat. So I'm super psyched about that.
Yeah, and as far as the fight side, I mean, I would say this has to be the highest level card we've ever had in the history of Karate Combat. And I'm saying that's a lot to say, right? I'm saying this before the event. So I can eat my words the day of the fight night, but I know I won't, man. The type of fighters we have, you're going to see the highest level athletes possible in the striking arts. And I'm really excited about the names we have, you know.
What fight are you the most excited for? Put you on the spot a little bit.
I'll tell you this. So the main event is going to be the fight that I'm most excited for. Our most viewed fighter in Karate Combat right now is actually a fighter that started homegrown here at Karate Combat. He's from the mountains of Pakistan, and he used to train himself off YouTube. He would watch YouTube videos. He made his own punching bag. He was training on the gravel, and he went from that to a Karate Combat superstar. And right now, he's just the most viewed athlete. I mean, it's really crazy the analytics this guy has across all platforms. His YouTube page, his TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, everything is just blowing up. He's getting more views than UFC champion. So it's really, really phenomenal how much of I guess engagement his fans have created around him. He's gonna be competing for a world title, so for the world championship. So that's going to be massive. That's our main event. Our co-main event is actually a guy that's a legend. His name's Oscarov, and Oscarov has been fighting since, he's been fighting since I was in high school. So it sounds like an older fighter, but this guy's fighting at the highest level since back then. So I'm talking about, what is that now? I mean, like 15 years of fighting world championship level fights, winning and I mean, he's gone through some crazy wars. He's lost some battles. He's won some, but he's just a phenomenal, terrifying fighter. When you see his face, I hate to say this. How can I say this nicely? He is not the most pleasing guy to look at. This guy looks like a fighter, like his nose is just permanently smashed, like to one side. And I feel like he doesn't fix it on purpose. Like he wants to look scary for some reason. So I'll just say it. He's hideous. The guy's hideous. His nose is bent in this way. I mean, one eye's crooked. I mean, the guy's terrifying, man. You would never mess with this dude. So he's our co-main event, and he's fighting an up-and-coming young superstar from Turkey. But it's just going to be such a violent matchup. And now we have these elbows in place, and these guys are excited about it. Like they are, you don't understand, they're drooling to fight with these elbows. And then alongside, like throughout the card, we have an undefeated bare knuckle world champion. He's transitioned to karate combat. He's going to be fighting for us too, as well as some Muay Thai world champs, some karate practitioners, like a bunch of different strikers. You're going to see a variety of different styles of striking come into the pit. And yeah, it should make for an amazing show.
A quick tangent. I think the phraseology we might suggest is a face for radio.
I like that. Yeah, a face that a mother can love, only a mother can love, a face for radio. These are the nicer ways. I didn't want to say it, man. See, in combat sports, you're just so blunt with it, right? I was just going to say, this guy's hideous. You don't want to, like, he's terrifying, man. And I mean it in a complimentary way. Like, I plan to tell him, I've never seen him in person. So when I go to Singapore, I'm going to tell him in person. I'm like, man, do you do this on purpose? Like, wait, why don't you fix this? I don't understand.
Oh man, I'm super excited for those events. I'm a big fan of jiu-jitsu, have practiced for the last 6 years or so. Are there going to be grappling events at Singapore as well?
Wait, first of all, I had no idea you're doing jiu-jitsu. That's awesome, man. That's really
appreciate
great.
it. Yeah, train out here. Yeah, train out of Easton here in Denver.
Okay, I'm not familiar, but that's really awesome. I think it's so important for people to practice the martial arts. So I'm glad to hear that. That's really, really cool. 6 years is a long time. Is that
Get
on
this
and off
man in
6
the
years
pit.
or 6 years straight?
So little break in like probably 2019, little break somewhere in COVID, but certainly the last 4 have been straight.
Wow, phenomenal. So purple belt, is that what we're saying?
Blue belt.
Blue belt. So your instructor's kind of mean, but it's okay. That's good. That's good.
And that's like the place. I love the gym, and it's a family of gyms here on the front range. So I'm like, all right, well, the old saying, the belt only covers 2 inches of your ass. So I'm like,
Yep,
it's not going to help my jujitsu. So
that's awesome.
keep on
You know
trucking.
who
Who?
That my instructor, actually. That's funny.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, his name's Hoist Gracie. So he said that. That was his quote.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, so as far as the grappling for Singapore, what happened is the card is so stacked. I'm talking about, we have, I believe, 10 or 11 karate combat fights. Then you have the IFC fights, which is another 5 on top of that. It ends up being, might be between like 15, 16 fights, something around there. It's a very long show. So I know we added an influencer grappling match, which is going to come on before the broadcast. But as far as like world-class grappling, there's sort of a debate internally that we have to really decide if we can fit in, because it's really hard. We want to do it. We want to keep it up, but it's a very long show. So I should probably get on a call and decide that, in the next day or so, if we can actually fit it or not.
Yeah, I guess that's that push-pull of making sure that you got the event fully stacked. I'm excited to hear one of the influencer fights is going to be a grappling match. Who's doing grappling instead of the standard?
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah,
it's actually 2 VCs. It hasn't been announced yet, but they were dying to do it, and we're like, all right, we can make that happen.
Oh, I love it. I'm excited to watch that. So I'll get some grappling either way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I were to, if we are going to do a grappling match on the Singapore card, the theme of the Singapore card is just world-class talent. I would have to headhunt someone really quickly that's on that world scale to get them a match. I could do it, but we have to decide if there's just enough time. This is going to be a long, exciting show right now, and I don't want it to drag out too long, right?
Totally. And what percentage of the karate combat events do have that grappling component?
We've been doing it every event since January. So what is that, like 9 events now, 8, 9 events now? At least there was one event where we only did, I think, 1 or 2. But we have had at least 1 or 2 matches every event since January. So about 8 events now in a row. This would be the first one where we would potentially take a break, which we're gonna have to see. I might have to keep it up, so we'll see what happens.
Well, it's definitely got a special place.
Yeah, you
Sorry,
asked
only
about the
LARPing.
future though a little bit, and one of my like kind of stretch goals over the next like 2-3 years is to really turn this into like multi-day events because we've got 3 formats now. We got Karate Combat, and then we have these 2 formats we started at the beginning of the year that are doing tremendously well: the Pit Submission Series and the Influencer Fight Club. And I think there's huge returns to scale to media and events. And if we can really continue to grow these alternate formats to stand on their own at some point, we can create multi-day events. And that's my goal. Like for the leagues is like some sort of Zoomer Formula One that's traveling around the world for like a multi-day event in different cities around the world. So, we got some exciting partnerships in the works on the pit submission side. The influencer side is like growing like crazy. Like it's almost a verb on the timeline now, like to karate combat each other, which is crazy because like we just started in February, we've only done like 4 of them or something. But I don't know. Everybody in crypto wants to fight each other in karate combat, and we're down.
Yeah, that's another thing that's very strange. I don't know how we're finding so many crypto influencers that are willing to fight each other. It's baffling to me. I'm like, yo, what's happening here? You guys are really aggressive. Crazy.
The reporter was asking. There's a reporter asking me about this yesterday, actually, and they're like, "Why do so many people in crypto want to fight each other?" And like they have their own theories about it and stuff. And I was like, it might not be what you think. I was like, people in crypto, like the ones that are fighting, sure, there's like some beef stuff going on, but mostly it's people who want to, it's very ambitious people. And they want to prove something to themselves. They're probably like, 30 plus at this point, and they want to like get back in shape, prove that they can do it, promote their own projects. And now the reason it gets so much views and attention and like the kind of the flywheel of it is, yes, because it's fighting, and fighting works tremendously well on mobile social. And crypto's always had this sort of aggressive nature to it. There's like the different chains that all hate each other, the different NFT projects and meme coins that hate each other. There's the PvP trading, and there's Twitter. It lives on Twitter, which is like the fucking war zone, right? And so, yes, like the media side of it, the reason it gets so much hype is because it is fighting. I'm sure if like everyone was like running a road race, like it wouldn't be getting as much hype. But the reason they're doing it is probably a little bit different than people think, I think.
It's probably also for reputation.
Yes.
Like people start talking
Yes.
shit on the internet, and then like their
Yes.
egos are involved, and they're like,
Definitely.
all right, well, now we got to take it to the pit. And then also people are like leveraging along, they're getting blown up, they're aggravated with the chop market, they got wrecked from like these, these bear traps, and like they just want to get it out of their freaking system. That would be my if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Well,
It's wild because the first IFC, look, I was a doubter. I'm a fan now, but I was a doubter. And the first IFC, I'm like, what the hell are we doing, man? I remember it was the press conference. It was like 5 minutes before the press conference. We just finished with the fighters. And ironically, the press conference, it was just really boring. The fighters just didn't bring the heat for this press conference. And I was just like, oh God, the IFC guys are gonna come here. It's gonna be even worse. And I was actually talking to Dean Thomas, who's a UFC analyst. And we're both just dreading it, right? Because the fighters were terrible. Now the IFC guys are going to come. It's their first time doing a press conference. We're like, they're going to bomb it. They went up there. They're way more exciting than the fighters. It was crazy. The crap that was coming out of their mouth, just the talk and the banter, and it was just hilarious. And they were so exciting that me and Dean looked at each other, which is the UFC analyst, and now he commentates for Karate Combat. We looked at each other and we're like, dude, let's see if they can back this up tomorrow. Because if they can back it up the way they're talking right now, this is going to be really fun. And it was unbelievable. If anyone has a chance to go back to our Mexico City event, that was the first IFC. It was spectacular to the point where commentators stopped doing their jobs. They stopped commentating. They started filming on their iPhones the fights. Because my mom is in the background just screaming, like freaking out. She's just jumping up and down. Like everyone was freaking out. It was so amazing. And I became a fan. That was it. I was sold. I think we all were sold. Everyone in Karate Combat. We realized.
No, that was a killer event. That was the first karate combat I watched because I was, Craig Jones fan, love watching the B team shit. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll come watch Craig Jones. And then, saw all the rest of it and have been watching ever since. But I think, this three-legged like stool approach that you guys got going is like sort of the perfect sort of like fight night because you've got the professional striking, you've got the professional grappling, you get both sides there. But then there's something so fun about watching people who aren't at this high pinnacle level fight. Like, unless you're a jujitsu guy, watching two black belts go to war can be incredibly boring because you don't understand the little grips and this and that and this counter and that. And then it all sort of leads to a crescendo at the end. But watching, two three-stripe white belts go to war and one of them's got a wrestling background, as long as they don't get gassed, like it can be very, very exciting because people do stuff that you shouldn't do. And that's the stuff that really gets punished or leads to some crazy sort of event. So it's, you get sort of all of it in one of these.
Dude, our rule set is incredibly fun for influencer amateur fights. They're fighting with 4-ounce gloves, right? And so they can't completely cover up. They get tired a little bit less quickly because they're not swinging around huge 16-ounce boxing gloves. And they're pretty hard, so they can actually kind of knock each other out. Like nobody's really getting seriously hurt. But if you watch most influencer boxing matches, like, yeah, you see the highlights from Jake Paul or whatever, it looks pretty cool. But most of the rest of them are pretty boring. Like they're tying up a lot. They're just like punching each other's gloves. Here, like, they're allowed to tie up a little bit. They're allowed to try and throw each other and scramble around and try and kick each other and shit. It's really entertaining. I think it is the rule set for like influencer fighting.
It's nuts, man. I love it. Just stripping away the strategy and tactics, maybe, and just they're fighting with their soul. They're just fighting with their whole being. Like they must fight, they must win. And I always go back to the same one because it was just so dramatic. But that fight, the main event in Mexico City, when it was Bit Boy.
Yeah.
And, he was sitting there. By the way, I may have said this on another podcast. I want to tell you guys, though. So the crowd started chanting a name. Bit Boy didn't know they were chanting for him. They nicknamed him Geppetto, from Pinocchio's father. The whole crowd just chanting, Geppetto, Geppetto. And then Bit Boy's on the stool. And it's about to go into the extra round. And he tells his corner, I don't want to go. I don't know if you guys know this. He's like, I'm too tired. I don't want to go. And his corner's like, you have to go out there. You can't give up. You have to get out there. And he freaking shook his head. He's like, okay. And he went out there and he wins. And it's just like, it was like the Rocky movie for crypto. It was awesome. It was awesome. I loved it, man. So Geppetto, I'm all for Geppetto.
Oh, that's freaking hilarious. We're getting pretty close to the top of the hour. We would be completely remiss if we missed one of the most important parts of karate combat, which is the pit. Can we dive into what was the inspiration around that? I think maybe I heard Craig Jones say recently, you guys accidentally made the best fighting arena, not only for striking, but for grappling, where out of bounds and such can really slow down the pace of the fight. Would love to hear a little bit of the backstory of the pit.
Onlylarping, you want to run on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to. You should jump in. I think at the end of the day, you need a boundary, right? Because otherwise, like people will drift apart from each other or like move too far away, and that's sort of the problem with most grappling surfaces. There basically is no like real boundary, and there aren't that many choices. The cage has been done. There's issues with it. Obviously, a ring has been done. And we were looking for something better, and there really aren't that many choices. And we were optimizing the entire league for mobile broadcast. And it was sort of like the only obvious choice for like amazing sight lines, something different. But they like kept the fighters close to each other because you really don't want to back up against that pit wall.
Yeah, it changes the whole dynamic of the fight. Because here's the thing about it. You're at such a disadvantage when you fall on the pit wall. And you're at such a disadvantage that you really want to force the fight to the center. So what that does is it puts both athletes stay in the center and it creates more action. right? Because the one circling most probably is going to fall on that pit wall. And then now they're sort of, essentially they're helpless, right? And they're just going to get beaten up. So it forces the action. It makes the fighters more aggressive. It's way better for viewership. Definitely makes the fight more dynamic as well. See, with the fence, so just ironically, my gym, my MMA team that I own here, we're known for our fence wrestling ability. Like, we have some of the best fence wrestling around. You know, if anybody wants to learn how to wrestle on the fence, they come to my gym. Thing about it is, in that vertical fence, it's very easy to stall. And a big part of the strategy is we use the fence to stall and take breaks. Well, in karate combat, there's no vertical object to lean on to take that break or stall. So it just keeps the action going constantly, even for the grappling. If you tackle someone on the pit, they'll immediately slip into your legs and you'll start grappling. Like, there's no break. And that's what's really awesome about it, you know? So the cage at first looked really cool, but I really feel the ultimate platform for all combat sports is the pit. To be honest, like, I feel like there has to be a day where the pit is not only used for grappling, not only for karate combat. I feel like an MMA promotion would one day be like, dude, we need to start doing this. This is way better. Every combat sport is better in the pit. Boxing, MMA, jiu-jitsu, everything's better in the pit. It's the ultimate platform, without a doubt.
And by the way, standing pit side, watching a fight, it's the best sports experience in the world. Like, if you see like our events filled with like the biggest names in Web3, some of the biggest celebrities in the world, they come there on their own. They beg us for tickets. We got people paying us like huge money for pit side seats. And it's a blast. You start pounding on the side of the pit, screaming one more round, which works, by the way. You can definitely influence the judges to throw it to one more round, or uno mas in Mexico. And it's a blast.
It definitely encourages some of the people who also know what they're doing to start shouting at the athletes and like trying to like coach them mid thing.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well done on that, you guys. Very well done.
Thank you.
Hell yeah. Well, we're right up against the top of the hour here, so want to take the chance to pass the mic back. Was there anything we didn't cover, anything we didn't get a chance to touch upon that you guys were hoping to? Feel free to dive into whatever you guys like, or just some closing thoughts.
Well, we got this. We did mention our huge event coming up in Singapore, but right after that, we'll be at Permissionless in Salt Lake City 3 weeks later, October 11th. We've got David Hoffman fighting Kane Warwick. Should be awesome. We've got a bunch of other IFC fights on that card as well. We'll be back in the States. It could be our last event in the States for quite some time. So come out to Permissionless if you don't get a chance to go to Singapore and hang out.
Hell yeah. I think I might have to pull trigger on some of those tickets because catching this has been a dream for a while. So that would be exciting. And I'm in Colorado, so Utah's just
That's easy.
Hopping. Yeah, easy peasy. Could even drive. Anything from you, President Awesome, before we wrap?
It's awesome. I mean, Onlylarping said exactly what I was going to say. You know, I was going to reemphasize Singapore. It's going to be phenomenal. But then we're at Permissionless, 3 weeks later, which is going to be an unbelievable card. We're actually locking in all the bouts this week. So we'll announce the main event very, very soon. Don't want to say yet. I don't want to jinx it. But the main event for Salt Lake City should be insane. Insane. We're bringing back one of our biggest stars, up and coming stars. So I think everyone will be very happy.
Hell yeah.
I mean, I would definitely vote to see Nick in the pit as well. 6 years. Let's see what you got. Let's see what you got, brother.
I'll start talking shit on Twitter, see if I can build up some beef with somebody.
There you go.
That's
Fuck
awesome.
your project.
Well, guys, look, I just want to thank y'all very, very much for coming on the pod today. And doing everything that you've done for crypto. You guys have probably been responsible for a huge amount of mind share and onboarding people into the industry. So very deep gratitude. And thank you very much for what you guys are doing. Very excited to see what y'all continue to do. And, you guys are friends of the pod now, so would love to have y'all back. And also for the citizens who are watching and listening, we have something special in the works that we're not going to tell you about, but we're going to tease you about it right now. So be on the lookout for that. But guys, thank you so much for coming on to the pod. And we will see you all. We'll see you all next time. Thank you.